Probably not. Okay, no. Okay. Sorry. Hey, Lou. Can you let the chair go down?
I have never closed here.
Good. I was like this, wiggling my legs back and forth like a 4-year-old.
I cannot relate to that sensation.
I'm gonna mess. Hello. Oh, is this yours, Lou? Nicer than mine. Here you go, some New Orleans bling for St. Patrick's Day. Oh, sorry. Oh, I got a dial.
Hi. What are these?
They're just like at the parades.
Festive?
And parades in New Orleans. Like the big St. Patrick's Day parade.
You're the sweetest.
And so they always give all these to just throw 'em. So everybody gets Catherine.
Thank you.
So Kelly, I do have that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry.
You're fine.
Thank you.
Like robot chairs.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Mansfield Board of Education. My name's Kathy Ward, the board chair. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Jill, can you call the roll, please?
Certainly.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I?
I apologize. Susanna Everett. Here. Martha Kelly. Here. Edith Allison.
Here.
Dave Latrico.
Here.
Catherine Paulus.
Present.
Jeanette Picard.
Here.
Kelly Zimmerman.
Here.
Great, thank you very much, Jill. Now we need to approve several minutes, so I will accept the motion to approve the minutes of January 27, 2022 budget workshop.
Just go around. I'll approve I move to approve those minutes.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next, approval of the minutes of February 3, 2022 mid-year review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Edith. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Susanna. Am I going too quickly, Jill? Okay. All right. Anyone have any objections to approving these minutes? Any abstentions? Thank you. Approval of the minutes of February 3, 2022 budget workshop.
So moved.
Thank you, Edith. A second. Thank you, David. Any objections? Abstentions? Thank you. Approval of the minutes February 10, 2022 regular meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Edith. Second. Thank you, Jeanette. Any objections? Any abstentions? Thank you. Approval of the minutes of February 23, 2022 special meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Edith. Second. Thank you, Kelly. Any objections to approving these minutes? Abstentions? Great, thank you. Last one, approval of minutes of February 24, 2022 special meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Susanna.
Second.
Thank you, Edith. Any objections? Abstentions? Excellent. Thank you very much. And now we're on to communications. Jill?
Thank you, Kathy. We have a number of communications this evening. They were all included in your packet. We have a letter of resignation from Elizabeth Verge, a letter to request the appointment of April Morin, a thank you note from Shamim Patwa, 2 letters of thanks from the Wyndham Area Interfaith Ministry, and from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education Incorporated, the Award of Excellence for Educational Communications, honorable mention letter, and a certificate.
Great, thank you very much. We've received quite a few communications over the past few months. We did have a request to read some of the emails, but that it would be an impossible task. We'd never get to the business of the board. But once again, we really do appreciate everybody contacting us. I'm sorry we can't read every one of the emails, but we do appreciate your communication. All right, now I would like to welcome April to come on up and sit. If you'd like to say a few words to the board.
Excuse me, April, just
Yeah.
so you know, you have to speak into the mic so that the recording can pick up what you're saying. Is the green light on? There you go.
It is
Thanks.
now. Okay. Thank you for having me this evening. I appreciate that.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the board?
There is. I wrote it down because, frankly, I'm a little bit nervous. It's been a while since I've interviewed for anything. I wanted to say to you that I believe education is about so much more than academics. It's about the health and welfare of our children. It's about teaching them how to get along despite differences in order to create a strong foundation for the rest of their lives. I have the time and commitment to be an active Board of Education member, and I believe my education and my compassion would make me an asset to the Board of Education. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, April. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Susanna?
Hey, April. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience on boards, if you have any other board experience?
I do have board experience. I was the tenant representative for Mansfield Housing Authority from July of 2018 through September of 2020.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for your statement.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Edith?
Actually, I don't have a question for April, but I just wanted to comment that I worked with April before I came here. I worked as part of the board of the Mansfield Housing Authority, and so April and I have worked together there. And April is a pleasure to work with. She's smart. She's well-spoken. She brings some great ideas to the table. And as I said, she's a pleasure to work with. I highly recommend that we approve her for the board.
Thank you, Edith. Full disclosure, I also served on the board with April, and just as Edith said, it was just delightful to work with you. I'm very excited about doing it again. So we're very happy you're here.
Thank you.
So now I'll accept a motion to approve April's appointment to the Board of Education. Thank you, David. A second? Thank you, Martha. Any further discussion? All in favor, would you raise your hand, please? Or say aye? Any opposed? All right, I think that's unanimous. Welcome, April.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
We really look forward to this. Come on up and join us.
Thank you.
If, so just a clarification for you. April's welcome to join the table this evening, but until she's sworn in, she can't be a voting member. However, the town clerk is available to swear her in at this time if you so choose, and then she can do more than listen tonight. She can participate as a voting member. That's
Thank you very much. April, would you like to be sworn in now? Yep.
I would love to.
Oh, Martha, please.
Do we have to first accept Elizabeth Verge's resignation before we can have a new member?
I don't know.
I believe
the
that's the responsibility of the town clerk.
Yes.
All right, just wanted to
Yep.
make sure.
No, good point. Thank you. All right, Sarah Ann, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you.
Uh,
All right.
Actually, if you don't mind, Sarah Ann, did you hear that last question?
I did, yeah. That resignation is considered in full effect the moment that I receive that original signed letter in my office, which I have. So there is no further action required on the board's part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Ann.
You're welcome. All right, April, I can see you, even though you can't see me. If you would please raise your right hand. And April, do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties as a Board of Education member to the best of your abilities, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah Ann.
You're
Jill,
welcome.
Do we have a speaker list or sign up? That brings us to our first hearing for visitors. Thank you very much. First speaker, Laura Medeiros. Laura, would you state your name and address, please? And you'll have 5 minutes. Go right ahead.
So I was not able to attend the last meeting. I had to watch it via YouTube, and there were some things that I wanted to put my opinion on, I guess.
Excuse me, I can't hear her.
So since I was not able to attend the last meeting and I had to watch it, I kind of wanted to address some of the things that I heard. Well, everyone gave their statements, and then when I heard everyone deliberating and giving their opinions on why they wanted to keep the masks, I heard, because COVID is still with us, which is very true, and the kids are not vaccinated. And those are all very true statements, but those are not, in my opinion, worthy of keeping masks on the kids at this point. Our kids are not vectors of transmission. I'm not going to go through all the data that I know we all know. I know you all know it. You guys, if anyone, have to sift through this data and make these hard decisions and look at case numbers, which I think is also a bad way to do this. But you look at the case numbers, you have to look at the maps, and you have to make these decisions for our kids. And I understand that. And I can't imagine that pressure. But at the same time, there's a lot of 2020 mindset I was still hearing, a lot of 2021 mindset. We know so much more now. We know so much more, that we know our kids are safe as possibly can be from any kind of virus. And one of the things I really wanted to address that struck me the most, and I heard this said by many people, not just in this platform, but on the news and all sorts of things, that the kids don't mind wearing the masks. The kids, they're going to be fine from all of this. And I don't think that's a fair statement, and I'm going to tell you why. Because they had no choice. They were compelled to wear masks. They were told they were heroes. They were told they were doing the right thing, and they were, especially when we didn't know what we know now. But now that we know, to continue to tell them that and then give them no recourse to say we don't want to wear masks. They have no voice to speak that, but then to say they don't mind. That is not fair. That is not fair. It's kind of gaslighting the kids. Because my kid would never speak up and say he doesn't want to be ostracized like that. And another point I wanted to make was To the immune compromised in our community who are still scared, and they should be, from many viruses. One, they have the choice to continue to mask. And I want to say, in this community, I have found it is the most welcoming, kind community. So if we're out and about and we see people without masks on, with masks on, we understand they're probably at a higher risk and they're going to get kindness from us. They're not going to be ostracized. For most of the pandemic, our community was behind keyboards, and we were looking on community forums, and we were seeing things like, if you see someone unmasked in the grocery store, approach them, confront them. That's not how it's going to be handled the other way. So I understand people not only are afraid for their physical health, but they were afraid to be ostracized in the community. Well, what if someone picks on me? What if I'm bullied for wearing a mask? I don't think in Mansfield that's a fair thing to say. I think we're too kind of a community. I think we're too welcoming of a community to put that on other people as far as ostracizing them for masking when it's for their safety. It's just, at this point, it needs to be the choice. It needs to be the choice of the parent. In my opinion, it should have been a choice of the parent from a long time ago, but you guys were doing your jobs, and I understand that. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that was thank you, because I know this has been hard to navigate, and we do appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. Elena Schreiber? Hello.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Elena Schreiber. I live at 147 Coventry Road here in Mansfield. I have 2 children in the public schools, one at Vinton and one at the middle school. And I do understand this has been a very difficult and divisive issue, and I appreciate, the board's consideration of the public and all of our concerns, even though they've been conflicting. And while I'm very grateful to see the low COVID positivity rate, as well as hospitalizations and COVID-related deaths declining, I'm also concerned about potential new variants emerging and subsequent surges in the near future. I'm assuming, or I expect, that masking in school is going to be optional after this meeting adjourns tonight, because that's just the way things seem to be trending. However, I'm very hopeful that this board will reinforce a mask mandate in our schools should we experience another surge. As a parent, it would be very helpful to have a clear idea of what the statistics would have to be for another mask mandate to take effect in the future. And I'm no expert, so I'm just kind of brainstorming. But for example, how many weeks does our town or county have to be in the red zone or the orange zone to meet that threshold? How many new positive cases among students, teachers, and staff per week would warrant a return to masking? I guess I'm kind of assuming that once the masks are optional, we're going to see an increase. So it would be helpful to know this ahead of time, and I don't know how the board would communicate that, if there's an email that goes out through the town. But that's something that, as a parent, I often feel kind of like in the dark about, well, what's going to happen if X, Y, or Z happens, and how will we find out? How will that be communicated? So I still have concerns regarding the low vaccination rate for elementary school students, which, as I understand it, is still currently under 50%. I don't know if that's still accurate, but it was at our last meeting. And that does include preschoolers who are still too young to get vaccinated. Additionally, I'm speaking in support of those who are the most vulnerable in our community, many of whom live with students in our schools who have comorbidities, rare and life-threatening diseases, and like myself are immunocompromised. And we will continue to wear masks in public for ourselves, regardless of whether or not other people are wearing them. But I do think that we have a duty to protect each other as well. So for these vulnerable students and their families, masking along with vaccination has allowed them to attend school safely and has also protected their loved ones. And I'm just asking the board to please consider these vulnerable members of our community when making decisions going forward, especially in the future if we experience new variants and new surges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Julia Schreiber?
Hello.
Hello.
Is this on?
You
Okay.
just need to speak into it, Julia,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia Schreiber. I am Elena Schreiber's daughter. I'm in middle school. I'm a 5th grader. And I would just like to say that I would like to say that I think masks should be required because I feel more comfortable wearing them. I feel like more protected wearing them. I feel safer wearing masks. I think it would be kind of strange to get back into the habit of not wearing a mask because I'm so used to wearing one. I think that if I did ever not want to wear my mask, it would only be when like COVID was officially like not very many chances, like very low chances of getting COVID, and I would probably feel safe taking off my mask then, but it would probably still take some getting used to. I feel safer wearing a mask, so I just feel like masks should be required. I think hearing a child's perspective might give a difference because I know that lots of kids at my school don't want to keep wearing a mask, but I know that a few people do want to keep wearing a mask, so I want to respect that they what they want.
5 minutes? I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's
Keep
okay.
going. Julia.
Respect what their decision is, and I want to respect what the other people's decision is for not wanting to wear a mask because I can understand that. I also don't really want to wear a mask, but I am because I feel safer wearing a mask. I wouldn't like to wear it for the rest of my life, but I would like it for the time being. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing those thoughts with us. Is there anyone else who'd like to approach the board? Would you come on up, please? Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Just a little louder and a little closer, if you would, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Lebreton. I live at 230 Hunting Lodge Road, Sigmund Drive, apartment 3F. I'm an 8th grader at Mansfield Middle School, and I have a little sister who's in 6th grade. I support wearing masks. I was asked and encouraged by other students to come here, and I was asked in particular by one student who would like to remain anonymous. She sent me an email and would like me to read it. The student says, "The COVID-19 virus is a situation all about patience, and for most of us, it has tested our ability to do so. However, it is simply not the right time to be lifting the mandate regarding masks, as I feel that this has been one of the most effective ways to help prevent the spread of corona. Frankly, it is a shame that we have all worked so hard over the past 2 years only to waste our efforts and have to start all over again. We've tried lifting restrictions before, and those experiments resulted in 2 variants. I find no logic in doing the same thing to find a different outcome. The reason we have lower cases is because of the mask mandate. Why take them off? It's very like touching wet paint to see if it's dry. The more you mess with it, the worse it's going to get. When you could have just waited and let it dry nicely. Why should we be stop wearing masks when it's helping the current situation? I'm well aware of the risk that some masks might have potential quote-unquote gaps in them, but that doesn't mean that they're doing nothing at all. Statistics show that the masks are doing something. As someone who wears 2 masks, I honestly find it frustrating that it is those who don't wear masks properly or even at all that are the ones who want the mandate to be lifted. It is not only the students that masks wearing affects, but it is the people that they go home to as well. I want to keep both me and my loved ones safe, and I'm sure others feel this way as well. To those who have survived the coronavirus, I'm truly happy for you. But that doesn't mean that other people are okay too. People are still dying, and anyone who wants to make it stop and to make it any better, so please keep the mask mandate. If we just wait a little longer, I believe that this virus can finally be over. As much as we all hope for this crisis to be done, it is not over yet, and we still should not waste our past efforts for the slightest hint of normalcy when we can be patient enough to wait for the appropriate time. And they would also like to add, they say, just like we can cover our mouths and noses whenever we cough or sneeze, we can also wear masks to protect others from our germs. It is about others that we need to protect, not about ourselves. And if we all work together, the hope would be that this virus ends faster, because lifting the mandate now is only going to make it worse. And this past week, I've heard a lot of talk about just how the kids feel about the masks and just how they feel about them potentially being optional. A lot of kids wouldn't feel comfortable in an environment like that. Well, being in 8th grade, we're able to really just make our own opinion about it rather than being forced to wear them. So there are a lot of kids that don't mind and don't really care about them, but there are a lot of students that just wouldn't feel comfortable being in school. And last year, remote learning was an option for those who feel that way, but since that isn't in the picture right now, I really think that by keeping the masks, it would be a good solution for that. I also wanted to add that just as a student said, immunocompromised parents, students, and teachers are all at higher risk, and we shouldn't risk their lives just to feel more comfortable.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's your 5 minutes.
Okay.
And thank you very
thank you
much
for having
for
me.
sharing that. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Coleman?
Good evening, Brian Coleman. I just want to make a comment about this evening. What a wonderful display of public participation that we just saw here tonight. And it was for such a contentious issue, and so many towns being in the news. And I'd like to comment just how civil it was. And I'm very proud of us, and I'm very proud of Mansfield. Can I make a comment about April Morin, or is that for another?
Please do.
Yes. As you know, I'm in public service, and it takes a great deal of time. It takes a great deal of compassion and effort to do the work, and I'm sure all of you here understand that well. I just want to let you know that April has the time and the commitment, and I think she'll do a very good job on the Board of Education. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, please come up. Yes, I'm sorry. I should stand up, I guess.
Good evening. My name's Erin Anderson. I'm at 840 Mansfield City Road. I did speak last week. I wasn't prepared to speak. Sorry, I didn't sign in again, but I have something that I wrote down I'd like to say today. So I'm confident that you will be lifting the mask mandate to follow suit with the other surrounding towns and communities. I just want to take this opportunity to express my full support for that decision, and I am hoping that that's the route that you choose to take for our kids. As mask restrictions have been lifted over the last year in restaurants, sporting events, concerts, and travel, I felt that the continued Continuing to require our students and children to wear them has been extremely frustrating. My kids loved school prior to COVID. They loved interacting with their peers, speaking in class, meeting new challenges, and learning. Increasingly over the last several months in particular, my kids have started saying things like, I hate going to school. I hate wearing masks. I can't hear what anybody says. They're just frustrated. They don't understand why, they look on TV and they see thousands, millions of people without masks, and they are required to wear them. They don't raise their hand in class anymore because no one can hear them, and when they talk, they don't like having to repeat themselves over and over. It just is discouraging for them. It's been difficult to arrange social interactions outside of school as there is a continued paranoia of COVID. As I stated in the last meeting, we moved to town during the pandemic, and making friends has been extremely difficult for my kids. I feel that as a society, we're placing too much pressure on our children to feel responsible for everyone else's safety and security. Children are the least affected community when it comes to COVID, and I really don't understand how they have the most restrictions. Children are inherently trusting, accommodating, and are, in general, rule followers. When people say that kids are resilient and they're handling mask wearing well, that's just them doing what they've been told to do. They're not okay. They're frustrated. They're mad, they're sad, and I fear for how this is going to show up in their lives years from now. Children are feeling an extreme sense of isolation, especially being contained to small cohorts, silent lunches, social distancing. No matter when we decide to end mask wearing, COVID will always be here. We have more research, data, vaccines, and treatments. After 2 years, I believe that we need to move forward. I'm sensitive to those who are at risk. I know several myself. We as a community should always be cautious for the vulnerable, but we cannot continue to put that burden on our children. They need closeness, they need community, they need to see smiles and touch and hug. If thousands of unmasked people can attend a Super Bowl, if we can all go sit in close proximity and eat in restaurants, if we can attend churches and social gatherings, then our children should be allowed to sit in a classroom with 15 of their peers without a mask. They should be allowed to see each other's faces, laugh and smile, talk, speak in class with confidence, and they should not be worried about getting too close. Millions of people are traveling and gathering and working in close proximity, and we continue to see the numbers decrease. It's time to get our kids back to normal. As we saw when the pandemic first hit, our Department of Education very quickly adapted to the online schooling system. While it is not ideal for everybody, it did serve a purpose for a short period of time. If there are parents who are uncomfortable sending their kids to school without masks, then those parents should have the option to keep their kids home. Moving forward, we should make online homeschooling the go-to for those who are uncomfortable without wearing masks instead of forcing everyone else to wear one. The masks our kids are wearing are likely doing more harm to their developing lungs than the minimal risk to them and those around them of contracting COVID at this time. They are difficult to breathe and in many cases wet, dirty, and full of bacteria and germs from constantly touching them and pulling them away from their faces. I'm sure it's unhealthy. I look forward to getting a sense of normalcy back for our kids. They deserve it. We need to move past the stage of fear.
Great, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anyone else? Come on up, please.
Hello, my
Hello.
name is Julia Slazinski, and I live at 355 Spring Hill Road, and I have 2 children in the Mansfield school system. I originally intended to come up here to this meeting armed with facts and statistics to present the argument that masks and isolating COVID restrictions are undeniably bad for our children. Now, as we are approaching the end of the mandate, I realize from me, as a parent, it is too little too late. Living in limbo for 2 years has kept myself and many parents like me in survival mode, just trying to get through the week or even the day. In my household, there are 2 working parents who have been working in the public throughout the pandemic. Our chosen professions require human contact and collaboration on a daily basis. The reason I bring this up is at the last meeting we had heard from members of the community who are terrified of contracting the virus, and there are still those who will continue to self-isolate. I feel for those members of the community. You can see the fear and exhaustion in their faces. I've seen it every day throughout my profession for the past 2 years. My fear is that we are on the brink of creating an entire generation of fear-driven decision-making adults, a generation, a group of thinkers a generation, a group of group thinkers with the inability to critically think and problem solve. We should not be setting a precedent that individual freedoms are subject to the comfort level of others. In other words, we cannot be asking our children to sacrifice their health for the health and comfort of others. We did not get off scot-free. Damage was done. Suicide attempts in our children is up. Depression, up. Anxiety, up. Speech delay, up. All of these things are up and affecting the lives, some of which, if they are successful at their attempts at suicide, are permanent for those families. So when I read an email, as I understand it, the board may still decide to re-implement masks or other restrictions as they see fit. My first thought is no. No, that decision cannot be made again when you cannot even present us with scientific data or results of a legitimate study that proves any of these measures did more help than harm in the first place. So before you consider re-implementing any mandates or restrictions, please consider this. You are not going to be met with the same attitude of good faith and trust as the first time. With a little bit of research, parents across the country are learning very quickly that there are means and methods of circumventing elected officials who have mistaken their position of representation for a position of power. Hopefully we're not there. I don't think we are yet. I do believe the best option for this community is a close relationship between the parents and the Board of Ed. In this way, we can keep and develop that trust and ensure that we are keeping honest people honest while maintaining a cohesive relationship between home and school. Thank you.
Anyone else? In the back, sir? I think.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Peter McDevitt, and I live at 219 Crane Hill Road. Like quite a few of my neighbors mentioned, what do I say? I am for lifting the mask mandate. I have so much history in Mansfield. As this gentleman said, I love this town. I commend all of you for doing such an awesome, admirable job of community service for us. And I'm grateful to you. As I said, when I was thinking, what words do I use? How do I convey to you my 8th grader at Mansfield Middle School and being an only child, and I got him a dog so that he just didn't. I'm a retired Connecticut State parole officer, and he just didn't have to be home with me all day. He could have a friend. So I wanted to tell one quick story, and that is, as a Connecticut State parole officer, I had the opportunity one day to sit in on a parole hearing. And this was a gentleman that was served most of his life in the state prison, and he was asking the parole board for release. And a little old man entered the room, and we were all well dressed in suits. Everyone had a well-educated college degrees, half this man's age. And he came in, he sat down, trembling, and he said, "What do I say? What do you want to hear from me? I've done everything that I've been asked to do. I've followed every rule. I've obeyed every law. I've been a model citizen. What can I say to convince you?" And he said, "It's time. It's time that I be released. It's time." And that's how I'd like to end, is I believe it's now time for our children. And I'm gracious, and I'm thankful to all, and I love my partners here, my neighbors, and quick story. My dad is a member of the Yukon Hall of Fame, and I grew up in the field house as a child. So I've been here almost my entire life. So when I say that I love the town, I mean it. But it's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to approach the board? Please come up, sir.
Kyle Stearns, 2 Stearns Road. I just got my son back in primary residency, and he was in a school system for past like a couple of weeks ago, and they dropped the mask out there. So now I'm trying to tell him he's got to wear a mask again, and it's just hard. He says he can't breathe well, he can't concentrate. It's just, I mean, it's just time to lift these masks. It's ridiculous. It's, you know, we got to grow. We got to move beyond this and grow. It's just, it's too much, you know? That's all I have to say. I didn't really plan on speaking tonight, but I'm speaking for him because he really wanted me to say, get rid of these masks. And I feel so bad because I feel like I'm just throwing them back out there again. And you know, they got rid of it at his school. I just got him, and now he's got to wear them again. It's just, some places you do, some places you don't. We got to get on the same playing field here, you know, so we're not getting all confused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Is that Rochelle? Come on up. It is Rochelle. All right.
Just this once?
For a package deal.
It's the last time, though.
It's been a long time. All right, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so Rochelle Marcus, 16 Homestead Drive, parent, teacher at Mansfield Middle School, and co-president of the Mansfield Education Association.
And Rich Weil, 213 Baxter Road, teacher at Goodwin School and co-president of the Mansfield Education Association.
We just wanted to thank you for your hard work. We've heard other people say it tonight. This has not been easy for any of us, and you're making decisions that have a huge impact on everybody in this town, people in the schools and people out of the schools. So we are really grateful for that. We appreciate that you have heard the voices that have been speaking to you. You've heard the teachers that we have the luck of representing and the joy of representing. And we trust you. So we just want you to know that we know this is a very difficult decision that you're going to have to make, but you have our support, and we trust that you'll do what's best for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? All right. Yes, please. Thank you, Rochelle. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for your comments, for the folks out there that have emailed us. As we've heard tonight, this is not an easy decision to make. Very emotional on both sides, and it's reasonable that it is. So I can just assure you that we will do our best to represent you and make the right decision, hopefully. So that brings us to any additions to the present agenda. All right. Board reports. Finance Committee. Finance Committee met earlier this afternoon, and I'm going to ask Charmaine to report out on what the committee is recommending. Charmaine, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Earlier this evening, the Finance Committee met to review basically the medical insurance fund. The medical insurance fund is a shared fund across 6 agencies, and the town, the Regional School District 19, and the Mansfield Board of Ed, the CEOs, if you will, have the authority to make the decisions on whether or not the fund is reduced in order to bring down the balance in the medical insurance fund so that it is not overfunded. And when we do that, it is to make sure that we maintain or stabilize the employer and employee shares of the cost share of medical insurance. So in the process of doing so, We also have do a statistical analysis on the, we work with projections and we determine whether or not it also makes sense to do something called a surplus distribution, which is in alignment with the medical insurance fund policy. The surplus distribution is distributed across, again, the three key contributors to the fund, which is the town and the two boards of ed. $600,000 was approved to be distributed for fiscal year 2021 across the three, again, significant contributors to the fund, and it had not been done in last fiscal year, so it is taking place this fiscal year. Again, the decision to do so was made back in fiscal year 1920 to take place in 2021. So we're basically doing a catch-up. So the discussion in this evening's meeting was to remind the Finance Committee that this was something that was approved 2 fiscal years ago for last fiscal year, but did not get done and is getting done now. So that's $600,000. And of the $600,000, the Mansfield Board of Ed's share of that surplus is $252,000, 42%. Again, the surplus distribution is distributed based off of the actual enrolled populations of the three major contributors. And so the Board of Ed has 42% of the enrolled membership in the medical insurance plan. And so therefore its share of the $600,000 is $252,000, which will then go towards its OPEB trust account. So in each of the three contributors have their own OPEB or other person's employment benefits that is also is part of the medical insurance fund. So again, $252,000 was the share of the surplus, $225,000 and $225,386 is the unfunded liability. That's the requirement that that is still outstanding, that the board is required to fulfill on based off of the census of those retirees that are covered by the board's share of the for OPEB. So that being said, again, the $252,000 share of the $600,000 is going to cover the unfunded liability that is in place today. Hooker and Holcomb is the OPEB trust fund advisor. They will be doing another revaluation this coming July. And should there be any changes, i.e. new members to the retiree pool or census, or new costs that after they do the actuarial review, they will then determine if there's yet another unfunded liability. And in your general fund, you will see that year over year, there's a small contribution that is made. It's a transfer out to the Medical Pension Trust Fund. That is the OPEB fund. So this is, again, just catching up for what did not get done last fiscal year. It's just making sure that everyone is clear on what is happening with the fund balance and the medical insurance fund. This conversation was had with the Mansfield Board of Ed Finance Committee was also had with the Regional School District 19's Finance Committee and will be had again with the Town Council's Finance Committee. So it's just making sure that everyone is aware of what's transpiring in the account.
Thank you, Charmaine. So just so we're clear, everyone's going to have a test on this after. We have no actions to take. You are simply letting us know that something should have occurred in 2021 that did not, and now that's going to be rectified and move on. But the board does not need to take any action at this time.
Correct.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Charmaine? All right, Charmaine, thank you very much for taking the time to do that. I don't think I would have done a great job with that.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Next, Personnel Committee, Kelly?
The Personnel Committee met with the Secretary Association and we negotiated a contract that we will present to you in executive session.
Thank you very much. That brings us to information, presentations, and actions. And I'm just going to ask the board indulgence. We're going to switch around superintendent report to the second spot and efforts to transition to routine respiratory disease prevention to the first spot, so our fellow citizens here can listen to the conversation sooner rather than later. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure, great. So if someone could bring up that slide deck for me, the update to the transition to routine respiratory disease prevention. I know this is a lengthy title, but I shared the same title with you when we held our special meeting a week and a half ago because I thought it was important for you to know that this is the title that's provided to us on the latest guidance from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and I think it in itself sends an important message that this is about transitioning to more routine disease prevention. And so I shared with you then that I would give you an update so that you could ensure that your decision to end the mask mandate on March 14th was something you were still comfortable with. So if we could advance to the next slide, please. So again, the state has asked us to consider individual community decisions. For these reasons, there's a widespread availability of vaccines. At-home testing is more plentiful. There are now treatment medications. We have falling case counts, and we have experience with layered mitigation strategies in our schools. So for those reasons, the state, as you know, on February 28th, allowed communities to make their own decisions. And I don't want to repeat all of this because this is what you saw before, but they're talking about shifting the focus to response to case clusters and outbreaks rather than the overall one-size-fits-all sort of approach to managing this pandemic. Again, I've shared this with you before, but I do want you to know that they are requiring us to continue with isolation guidelines, to follow those that they've given us, which means that people who are COVID positive still do need to isolate for a minimum of 5 days. And then when they return to school, they're asked to wear a mask for days 6 through 10. They ask also that if you have a known exposure, that you do self-testing. And if you were a close contact with somebody, that you wear a mask. And if you were unvaccinated and you were identified as a close contact in an out-of-school setting, that you can follow the quarantine requirements of 5 days of quarantining and then wearing a mask for days 6 through 10. So these are not new practices. These are things that we've had in place for many weeks now in schools and routines that we've been following. They then went on to suggest that it's time to transition based on community and school district prevalence, the risk tolerance of a community, our COVID vaccination status, a plan to support those who are at risk, supports for those who wish to continue to wear masks, and then a process for continuous risk assessment and making sure we have a contingency plan should there be potential surges. So I think when we met last, you understood that these things, these requests for such things as contingency planning and processes for continuous risk assessment were things that we had in place or could improve upon in the days that you asked us to continue with the mask mandate. So I'd like to give you an update on where we are with our case counts. And then I'll share something else with you about case counts. So I think you'll remember again that the data that we get lags a full week, and we don't get our data until Fridays. So the last data I have is for the week ending February 26th, which is now almost 2 weeks old. But you can see that there is essentially no change from the previous week's data, suggesting that we've had no increase in case counts. The thing I want to mention about case counts is that the CDC, shortly after you met actually, on February 28th, came out with revised guidance on February 25th, came out with revised guidance on mask wearing. And we had heard this from public health previously. that the better measure of what's happening in public health happens at a county level, where there's a larger population of people. The statistics are more stable, obviously, with larger populations. And so the CDC used all of the data that they have to create county level data that they, again, believe is more stable data. And they further said that it's not just about case counts, because as with any influenza, you will continue to have cases of influenza or cases of COVID virus for many years. What is important is that you look at your community's ability to manage that. And so their community level data includes such measures as the number of hospital beds and the number of hospital beds filled. So while they do use case counts, they don't make their decisions solely on cases, which is different from the Connecticut structure. We didn't have this information back in 2020. What we knew, and we barely could count it initially, we were able to count the cases. As the pandemic has gone on, our data systems have become much more sophisticated, and we've learned to identify data that we think are more important to understanding what's happening. So that is why the CDC has moved to this new community levels rating system. It is a 3-tier rating system, and Tolland County is in the green, the lowest rating system, which would suggest that mask wearing is up to the individual. There are, as you probably have heard, 3 ratings, the green, orange, and red. At the red rating, they do recommend masking for all people outside their home, but in green and orange, it is considered up to the individual. At the orange level, they suggest people with autoimmune system problems or for other reasons are at risk, that they should wear masks. But individuals who are healthy, even at the green level, at the orange level, they suggest masks should be optional. So that's where we are with case counts in Mansfield. I'll let you know where we are in schools as well. If you can flip to the next slide. Again, we have been monitoring cases by the week. You can see a continuous or a significant drop-off between February 11th and 18th. And then from February 23rd on through the 4 days that we've been in school this week thus far, you can see that we have really stabilized. I don't know that we're ever going to get to 0 cases every week, but to have 4, 2, and 3 cases over the last 3 weeks suggests to me that our cases among children and staff are certainly declining. And then finally, it was also suggested by the Department of Public Health that we look at vaccination rates. I have updated this slide, so this is now, again, the latest data since March 2nd. It has gone up slightly since what I presented to you about 10 days ago. We now have 49% of children aged 5 to 11 who are fully vaccinated, and 71% in the 12 to 17 category. And you can see that those who've received a first dose is a little bit higher, so we would expect the fully vaccinated to continue to rise as well. And no change, of course, in staff. We still have 96% of our staff who are fully vaccinated. So a few other changes, I guess I can do this. Since the last report, I've spoken quite a bit about the CDC guidance. The other thing that the CDC did on that day when they came out with that report is that they decided to exempt school buses from the Transportation Authority's requirement that masks be worn on public transportation. So as of February 28th, masks have not been required on school buses. We are still asking children in Mansfield because of the mask mandate in schools, but when that mask mandate ends, children in Mansfield will no longer need to wear masks on buses, even though they would have to wear a mask if they were on a public bus in downtown Hartford. The other thing that you should know, and again, I'm sure you are aware of this, that the town of Mansfield on the 28th made masks optional in public spaces as of March 1st, and the next evening on March 2nd, E.O. Smith also chose to make masks optional in their high school. So as far as a transition plan, I was asked last time to be able to share with you some of the things that we would do if masks were no longer required in schools. And one thing I want to reinforce is that the whole idea of transitioning to managing this virus is not to remove one mitigation strategy, only to impose other mitigation strategies. So the idea is to continuously, in small steps, move forward. So we are not bringing back any of the strategies that we're no longer using. Instead, we're keeping the strategies that we have and continuing to move forward until we think it's safe perhaps to change another strategy. So for right now, we would continue to ask that classrooms and other settings in school maintain a 3-foot distancing, which has been much less interruptive than the 6-foot distancing was last year. And again, it doesn't mean that children can never be close together. It's just that we're not going to put them shoulder to shoulder together for long periods of time. We do still have children that sit at the same table with each other, for example, so that we are trying to balance that with both the socializing needs of children and the learning needs. We know kids need to be collaborative when they learn, and we have felt much better about our opportunities to do that this year. We still, especially in the elementary schools, are making sure kids are sanitizing their hands in and out of classrooms so that we're careful about making sure that we're not inadvertently spreading the virus through touch, even though we know that like we're no longer not allowing them to share materials or wiping down desks all the time, because we've learned over time that that's not how this virus spreads. We are very flexible in our lunchroom practices, responding to the needs as necessary. So in January, when our cases spiked, we spread everybody out in the lunchroom again. Now that the cases are back to manageable levels, you'll see children closer together in our lunchrooms. We also have changed the ways in which we identify students who may have been in contact with others who are COVID positive, and those practices will continue. So we are now notifying families or a group of people, whether it's families or adults in our building, when somebody with whom they have been in the proximity of has become COVID positive, rather than doing the individual identification of students as close contacts. Again, that is still happening in the community, but that is not happening in the schools. So we are not identifying in schools children who need to stay out of school to be quarantined. And as I mentioned before, we would continue with the request for masks after people return to school if they were COVID positive. And for those students who will choose to continue to wear masks, and we do expect many will, we will continue to provide some routine breaks for them to take the mask off safely outdoors, which is what we've been doing for the last 2 years. One more slide. We have already, principals have already had conversations with faculty about how to prepare to ensure that our schools are viewed as safe spaces for all students, regardless of individuals' decisions on whether or not to wear a mask. And we would let our bus company know that masks will become optional on buses as of March 14th. And we will also request that staff and students use those at-home test kits that we were able to distribute last week, especially if they're not feeling well and they're choosing to come to school without a mask on. And we do still have a supply of test kits for families and staff if they are needed. So that's the situation. That's where we are. The vote that you took on the 24th said that masks would become optional as of March 14th. If you would like to reverse that decision, it will require a vote. If you're comfortable with that decision, there's no action that you need to take.
Thank you, Kelly. Comments? Martha, please.
One of the things we did early on is we were doing a lot of cohorting. Are we doing that still?
No, we stopped cohorting at the start of this school year. It was one of, it was removed from the State Department's guidelines as of the start of this school year.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other comments? Absolutely.
I mean, I just wanted to thank everyone again for coming and expressing your opinions and feelings about this today. It's a very difficult decision. Obviously, well, it's not a decision that we've made, but I just want to again reiterate what everyone talked about today about being respectful of and honoring people's decisions and opinions on their decision about whether to wear a mask or not. And like we just remember, we rarely know the circumstances of folks you know, the full story of other people's circumstances. So just being thoughtful and respectful of that, and just thanking teachers for helping to support kids in this transition.
Kelly?
It's one of the transitions that's going to continue is increasing the airflow in elementary schools with encouraging teachers to keep windows cracked and doors open.
Yeah,
as well.
no changes to our
Okay.
ventilation practices. Yes.
And I think that, you know, I agree. It's a really challenging place to be for us and for all of our families and students. Some things that I just want to comment on that I did last time, but I want to reiterate is I have a tremendous amount of empathy for our families who have siblings in that 0 to 5 age group that are not eligible to be vaccinated yet. I think that's a really hard ask for people, and just, you know, I just feel empathetic toward them. I struggle with what a free and public education looks like, how we are providing that for students, since there is no online option for immunocompromised students or people who have immunocompromised family members. But I'm not, you know, a Supreme Court judge, so I don't feel like I have the authority to really delve into that. And with all of the CDC changes as well, I'm also not an expert in science. So, you know, I think that all of the questions that have been presented and asked, I think that as a board, we've done a really solid job of following the science and following what has been presented to us either by Eastern Highlands Health or by the CDC. And I think that that should continue to drive us in the future.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Martha?
Yeah, I feel more comfortable with their decision last week to have optional as a choice. As of the 4th of March, there are 5 locations in Willimantic where by prescription there are oral antiviral therapies are available, and these are authorized by the FDA, and they're for, you know, COVID-19 issues. So knowing that these are more available, plus, you know, we have at-home test kits, we have a lot of masks, we have the vaccines. So with these therapeutics that are now in our locale, I think that's another layer of protection for us. So yeah, I'm feeling more comfortable. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Martha. David?
I just want to say that, you know, we took the vote a couple weeks ago, and I support how I voted. That would end the masks Friday. It's not been easy for me. I have kids in school too. And for people who are concerned, I fully understand. It's been so tough on all of us, but I stand by what we did and feel more comfortable with the latest numbers that we're doing the right thing by ending it Friday.
Thank you very much, David. Jeanette?
I also stand by our decision. We did not have all the numbers that we needed at the point that we made that decision, and some of our numbers were not as positive in terms of good news. I want to thank Kelly and all of the staff members in our school system for all the hard work they've done in preparing for this. And I want to make sure that, as one of our speakers mentioned, people in our town try to speak civilly to us, and I hope that we will continue to encourage our students to treat each other civilly, regardless of what decision they're making, and make sure that we have empathy for the reasons behind those decisions.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Well, I'd like to thank the board for your thoughtfulness with this. I'd like to thank the community for your patience, giving us this transition time. I think gave opportunity for families and staff to think carefully about how they assess their risk. So I think it was an important transition time, but I personally feel it's time to move on. So mask optional, and I have complete confidence in our staff that being kind is something that Mansfield promotes anyway. It's the word. So I am sure that that will be taken into consideration with each child making a different decision if that happens. So thank you to everyone. Thanks to the community. Been a tough one, but I think we're making the right decision.
And I just want to clarify, and I'm glad David used Friday in his comments, because mask mandate ending March 14th means that Monday, March 14th will be the first day that masks will be optional. And so I will make sure that there's a communication tomorrow to families and to staff to let them know that on Monday they will have the choice to wear a mask or not.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anything else? We don't need to take an action on that.
Nope, no action necessary. I'm going to move along to my superintendent's report, and really was not trying to invite everybody to leave, but I won't feel badly if you do.
To do that.
But I do have some exciting things to share if anybody wants to stick around. I do have some good news to share with you this evening. I want to begin. I don't know what happened to our. There we go. I want to begin with some good news about middle school students. Every year we have students who participate in a science quiz bowl competition. They recently made it from the state competition to the Southern New England competition. MMS was one of 29 teams. We had 2 teams that participated, and both of our teams have made it into the top 16 round. And so now they are going on to the semifinals for the Southern New England competition. And this is a competition that goes all the way to nationals. So we wish them all the best, and we'll see where they end up in a couple of weeks. We also had some real excitement in our elementary schools over the last couple of weeks. Jill, can you click that and see if that's going to come up? We identified a mascot. I was going to say a mask mandate. We identified a mascot for the new Mansfield Elementary School. And if you can hit join with Google, let's see what happens. Can you enter your email? I think that'll work. No, it's not working. Well, I was afraid this might happen. I think I sent you the link, but oh, you think it's that one? So let me tell you a little bit about how this mascot was identified. Knowing that our 3rd graders will become next year's 4th graders at the new middle school, the 3rd graders were tasked with leading the mascot selection process. Each of our 6 3rd grade classrooms broke into small groups and created a persuasive argument for why what they had chosen as the mascot should be our mascot for the new elementary school. Each of those classroom teams then shared their work with their classmates, and each classroom identified entering one mascot into the competition, if you will, and then the entire student body, it's not going to work, that's okay. The entire student body, grades pre-K through 4, voted. Each class made a video, which is what I was trying to show you. I also sent it to you. Oh, it came up, great. Okay, so each class made a video. Students watched 6 videos before they selected the winner, and the Tigers won. And I thought you might like to see the video that the 3rd graders created to convince their peers to vote for the Tiger. Well, we can see it. Louie, I don't know if you're back there, if you can help us get audio on this. I think our video guys stepped out. Oh, can you help us get audio on this? Okay, thank you. I have to say the written arguments that I saw were really expertly done. Kids gave this a lot of thought. They really thought about what it means to be a community, and they tried to identify mascots that really exemplified their values about community. Can you bring it back to the video and we'll try it?
Vote for the Tigers! In the Chinese zodiac, 2022 is the year of the tiger. We can honor the year we chose our mascot by choosing tiger. Tigers are known for being responsible,
Can't really hear it.
confident, passionate, perseverant, and courageous. We want to have these traits as members of our school. Tigers are multicolored animals. Their stripes and colors can remind us of the many identities that are represented in Mansfield. We thought of some acronyms for our school expectations. We could use PAWS or WOOL. We created this logo for our new school mascot. The logo represents our values, such as all people should be respected and accepted. Vote for the Tigers for our new school mascot.
So unfortunately, what you weren't able to hear was part of their rationale was that tigers come in all different stripes and colors, and that we just like kids, and we need to, accept all kids. It was very sweet. So congratulations to the 3rd grade class that identified the tigers, and there'll be lots of activities now moving forward using this new mascot. I love there's even a bigger picture than what's shown on the screen, but I love how they encircled the tiger with all different children. Notice how all the children are different. So really nice job. I'm not sure the next slide's going to work either, but I was hoping to share with you this evening some of the work that's been done to help with our recruiting practices. You're going to hear a report this evening on the equity study, and one of the things that we've been working hard on is how to ensure that we're recruiting and attracting as diverse a pool of candidates as we can. And part of that effort was a collection of videos that were made for our website and for us to use in recruiting events. And this is a lovely video of a couple of teachers talking about how in Mansfield we grow educators and what it has meant to them to work in this community. We'll give it a quick try. Louis, if it doesn't work, we'll forego it, and I can send it to you all to take a listen to. It is embedded, yep. Okay, that may be enough of a try.
You're here and you're growing. Like, that's just the mindset. Like, that's what people believe and think here. It's hard not to get on that track of wanting to learn more and grow in a place like Mansfield.
I truly am grateful for my administrator, and when I do go to speak with her, I feel like I'm being heard and that she believes in me as an educator.
Which is kind of exciting because I'm the kind of learner that I want to learn, I want to keep growing. I'm with the people that feel that way too.
Since I've been here in Mansfield, some of the opportunities for growth that I have had is pursuing a cross endorsement in teaching English as a second language with the ARCTEL program. And being able to do that program has really allowed me to bring in a lot of what I learned.
The teachers are growing, the leaders are growing, and I think the mindset of the district is that we're all in a community that grows together. It's always been the mindset of what can we do to make this better? How can we improve?
If I have something in my classroom, I can go and I can speak to her, and she will have that feedback or those strategies or those tools that I can use right away the very next day in my classroom. Having that chance to grow has allowed me to really reflect on who I am as a teacher. When I think back to how I was teaching just even 3 years ago, it's completely different and it feels different to me. And that's because of the specific and the meaningful feedback.
I was provided with a lot of opportunity to learn more about that role of coaching and supporting teachers and developing curriculum with teachers. I found myself wanting to learn even more about leadership. So just recently I started taking classes to become a principal. So now I'm enrolled at UConn at the UCAT program, and I'm in my year 2. I don't think I would have been able to push myself to that if I hadn't had leaders and colleagues working with me to help me see that that was like my next step.
Being in this district, I feel like I'm not a number, and it's a sweet feeling to be able to have an input in what it is that we're teaching. To work here in Mansfield, you need a strong work ethic. You can't just come in and think you're punching in and punching out. There's, a lot of work to be done here, and it's work that's meaningful and that's important and will be long-lasting, impactful for our students here in Mansfield. So it's a chance to be part of something great.
Yeah, some nice sentiments, right? Yeah. So this is now up on our website, on our recruitment page, along with another video about some of our teaching practices. And I shared one with you before about our core beliefs. So we're hoping that all these efforts are going to help. I'm going to move right along. Yeah, I know. Try the little arrow down at the bottom left. Okay, so this is just a little information piece for you. Monitoring our current school year schedule. As you know, our school calendar includes 5 days that where we anticipate inclement weather. That to date, we have used 4 of those days. So our current last school day for students is Monday, June 21st, and our current last day for teachers is Tuesday, June 22nd. There's one more allowable day on the calendar, which would bring the teacher's last day to June 23rd and the students to the 22nd. I share this with you because the move-out date at Southeast School is June 24th. And Southeast School is to be turned over to the construction team for the demolition work to begin the next Monday, June 27th. So I've been watching weather this year like no other year. I don't see any more snow in March right now. Exactly. A week ago I would have said the same thing. So we've had to do this before, where we've had to make some adjustments to our calendar, and an option to continue to add days in June this year is not going to be on the table. So I'm fingers crossed that we don't have any more than one day. If we do, I will need to come to you and talk about ways to make up those additional student days and teacher days. So
We have the flexibility to do 2 days as remote days, correct?
we do. Students go 182 days. You're only required 180. So that certainly is a possibility if some big storm were to come. My fear is that it's been so long since we've done remote that it would be a challenge to do that for a random snow day that pops up in the middle of a week somewhere. But it is a possibility. And we did this before, just reducing the number of student days. Yeah. So again, just putting it on your radar. And hopefully we won't have to talk about it, but there it is. And then I'm going to end this evening with some really exciting news. Congratulations to Mike Seal, who's here in the audience. As you saw in the announcements that have gone out, Mike Seal has been selected as the Director of Teaching and Learning. You know how important I think this position is, and the work that it will help this district accomplish will be significant, I know, because Mike is a really talented administrator who has dedicated 6 years his professional life to Mansfield, and is really dedicated to continuing the good work that's happening here. I think you've heard me say before, we have a really outstanding administrative team, and I'm thrilled that you supported the idea of adding this position, not just because it's a critical position to us, but because it gives me an opportunity to ensure that our talent is in the right positions. And Mike knows that, as wonderful a principal as he is, his skills are needed at a district level as well. So Mike, congratulations.
Congratulations, Mike.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to keep moving us through, unless you have any questions for me. Go right ahead. Okay, I'm going to keep moving us through. The next thing I want to talk to you about is budget. You thought you had already adopted a budget, and that in fact you have, but we've had some things come up that I think I'm going to actually suggest this evening that you consider amending or revising the budget that you adopted in February. So when we began the budget process, putting our budget together in January, we had an estimate of what our insurance costs would be. And when the insurance calculations were completed, we found out that our estimate was incorrect, thankfully in the right order. I'm sorry, I forgot something. I will come back to that. But thankfully the change in budget is to our benefit, and so what I'd like to share with you tonight is how the change in the cost of medical benefits is affecting the budget that you've already adopted, and why I think you should be voting this evening to revise your proposed budget. So I know I have Charmaine on the phone still, and what Charmaine and I have done is we've revised that final document that you usually get that gives you an overview of the budget, because I thought that would be the simplest way to show you the impact of this change. So you have a slide deck in front of you, and the first few slides are slides you're familiar with. I'm not going to review for you the budget highlights, but I would like to go to the major cost driver. And Charmaine, if you're there, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure, my pleasure. Again, not to sort of reiterate the things that you've already heard for the past several weeks as it relates to salary increases and transportation. The real driving change to the and why we're recommending a budget adjustment is, as Kelly indicated, the employee benefits. So the health insurance primarily is the driver of this change. When the budget was being developed, we had a target of 7% increase from Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, plus their administrative service fees. At that time, it was before the enrolled population had been fully loaded up into the Anthem system. We didn't know who the census was that was going to be tied to the Mansfield Board of Ed. So we were operating off of the census from the prior year and a 7% increase flat across the board. Now, what that meant that there was, and we just did a natural increase of 7%. After we, as I call it, ticked and tied every single enrolled individual or the respective agencies that make up the medical insurance fund, we discovered that there were, whether people opted in this time or not, whether they changed their coverage or not, meaning the boards of ed have an HSA, period. That's the only option that they have. The town has more variability in the offerings as well. So that all of this stuff gets fed into, the medical insurance fund. and then it has to get allocated across the respective employer group. So once we did all the math based off of everyone who enrolled in the plan, the enrollment process took place in December. We got the data about mid-January or so after everything got locked in with the insurance company, and we started to do the calculation. What we determined was that the medical insurance fund was robust enough to afford a reduction, meaning sort of like a haircut. We would use some of the medical insurance fund to try and minimize or mitigate the impact of the rising cost of insurance for both the employer, that's the Board of Ed, and the employees, all those who pay into the medical insurance fund for their medical coverage. And when we did the analytics, and then we met in accordance with the medical insurance fund policy, we met with the three, as I call them, CEOs of the major contributors to the fund. That would be the town manager and the two superintendents, one for R19 and one for the Mansfield Board of Ed. At that meeting, we walked through the calculations that were done by the finance department, and we made our recommendation. Our recommendation was to reduce the medical insurance fund by a little over $500,000. This is not unique. This has been done before. This is our effort to make sure that we have significant funds in the medical insurance fund to cover any unexpected anomaly. And B, to make sure we're not overfunding the medical insurance fund at the peril or the pain of the respective contributors. That's the employer groups and the employees. So once all of that was done, based off of the numbers of the actual enrolled population, your census, the Mansfield Board of Ed, the actual financial responsibility for the Board of Ed was substantially lower. So as we all know, one of the major key drivers is obviously salaries, and then there's benefits. So after all of that reevaluation was done, what it turned out, if you look at that bullet in the first reduction bullet, employee benefits, health insurance, across health insurance, MERS, which is the retirement plan, and Social Security, there was a savings of $88,240 versus an increase of over $226,000, which was primarily driven by the medical insurance. So this is the reason why that delta is substantive. And again, I reiterate, the meeting that takes place with the town manager and the two superintendents. So if this budget is not adjusted in accordance with that medical insurance fund calculation, you're in essence bloated. So you would have budgeted substantially more against an account line that is not necessary.
So I just want to make sure you understand what a significant shift this is. So we had budgeted well over $200,000 to cover the increase in medical costs. But because we were able to recalculate the cost of medical insurance, we now actually can reduce last year's line item by $88,000. So not only are we not having to increase by $200,000, we're actually reducing the line item over what we had spent in the current year. There's one other small shift we made of about $20,000 to cover something called our OPEB benefits, which we talked about earlier with regards to what was discussed at the finance meeting tonight. But when all is said and done, if you look on the left-hand side of these slides, you'll see that rather than our budget for 22-23 increasing by 1.06%, it is actually now going to decrease by 0.2%, which means we are bringing in a budget that is $42,000 less than current operating year. So again, I just want to show you the salaries aren't changing. We're not changing any of our staffing proposals, but our benefits lines are changing. And so benefits now take a smaller, not just a smaller amount of money, but they also are a smaller percentage of the overall budget. You can see that the benefits line itself decreased 2% over current year. So it's a significant change in the budget. It also really supports this slide you've seen before, supports the argument that what we're doing in our health insurance and medical benefits process is really paying off. So this shows you, since we started the high deductible health care plan in 2018, the change in expenditure from year to year. And you can see that our costs are still significantly less than they were in 2018. $710,000, that's a big difference. No changes to services, no changes to supplies, no changes to equipment or other programs. We're still going to save $1.3 million in the school consolidation, but now we look at our budget history, and you'll see, of course I can't see it because the little zoom thing's in the way there, but you can see over 10 years that your average budget increase is only 1.54%. And again, I would attribute, if you look at those values up there, I would attribute a lot of that to medical insurance costs. The only year that you've seen an increase of any significance was in a year when we did have to increase our insurance costs. And that was last year. So again, the proposal this evening, what I'm proposing for you to take action on is to revise your budget and to adopt a budget. Can you go to one more slide? Adopt a budget of $23,963,290. You've been provided in your packet the memo that describes this, as well as some of the excuse me, the sheets from your budget book that shows you exactly where those changes are.
Anyone have any questions? Jeanette? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see Deb.
I just, out of curiosity, we are saving 710,000, is that it? Something like that?
Over where our costs were 6 years ago,
Okay.
before we started the high deductible plan.
So the proposal is to have that lower budget.
Yes.
Is there any need to put that money somewhere else where it would be of value to reduce something else?
We're using some other funds from our medical health insurance fund, which is also at a point in its development where we can take some funds away from it to pay down our OPEB expenses, our medical pension trust fund expenses. So I feel like we've taken care of those things. This is a significant amount of money. As you can see, it's more than 1% of your budget. We don't like to carry that much excess, nor do I think, given what you've been able to fund in this budget, that there are any unmet needs this year.
I think it was great that you only came over budget by a tiny bit when you first proposed it. Now you're telling us it's way less.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you, Dave. Jeanette?
I guess I really want to piggyback on what Dave said. First of all, when people within the town vote on budgets, they will be very excited to see a 0.2% decrease. But next year, when we have to put forth a budget that does have an increase, it will make it perhaps more difficult to have the increase that we need, because it is so much lower. Secondly, we did have some questions from teachers who wrote a letter asking for different kinds of faculty or professional support, and I'm wondering if some of that money might be used for that. We could still have a 0% increase, which is pretty exciting in and of itself, but it seems that this might be an opportunity to shift our funds to provide support in another way.
Martha?
So to me, the figure that's missing here is the original submission from, a couple weeks ago. So I think it was about a $250,000 increase from the 24 million. I think it was about 24,256,000-ish, something along those lines.
Which
That-
figure are you
what-
looking for?
The number I'm looking for is the amount of money that was approved a couple weeks, 3 or 4
Total
weeks ago.
budget or for
Yeah,
medical?
total budget.
Total budget?
Total
approved?
budget. I think it was it's like 24,256,000.
for you right here.
Something like that.
It's attached to the memo, and it's 24,260,760.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Charmaine, you and I were talking at the same time.
I'm sorry.
$260,760.
Okay. All right. So when I look at that and I subtract the proposed, I get like 290 some odd thousand less. I don't get just.
So remember, we put $24,000 into OPEB?
I know, but what I'm saying is, and I was using my other figure, the 24,256,000. So I was off $4,000. We did have a $250,000 increase over the prior year, and so now we're thinking about almost $43,000 less. So that's a $293,000 difference.
Right. Because
But that's not, what else
because
is involved?
we allocated $226,480 increase in medical benefits. And in fact, our medical benefits decreased by, what's the figure in that document?
332,000 plus dollars from what you originally budgeted. Your year-over-year difference is 95,000. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
88,240.
I may have missed the comment.
Martha, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I just didn't understand. It's almost $300,000 less than we were talking about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and how I didn't think that all of the medical benefits came to that.
It did, because we had a $226,000 increase in our line item, but our actual costs for medical benefits are decreasing by about $80,000. So you add the 80,000 to the 226, right?
Yeah, that's the 300.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Catherine, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Aside from the year 2020 and 21, where in 21 the amount did go down by a bit, I have always been told that we cannot present a budget that is less than what it was the previous year. It can be the same, but not less. So I'm questioning that.
So are you asking if we're allowed to do that, or you don't want to do that?
No, I'm asking if we're allowed to do that, because in all the years that I've been on the board, I mean, it's always been said, well, maybe not since you, but that the budget we can't reduce our budget unless we go through the state to ask permission to do that.
So I think what you're talking about is the minimum budget expenditure that's required by the state through statute. So first, I will remind you that you've seen budgets in my time here that are as much as 0.7% less than previous year. So we have
That's what
done
I'm
it.
saying, 2021.
Yep. There are a couple of allowances for that budget, minimum budget requirement. One of them has to do with if you have a school consolidation, another one has to do if you have a significant decline in enrollment. But the other thing that makes it a little more complicated for Mansfield is that your total educational expenditures are not just what you spend on your K-8 district, but they also include what you spend at E.O. Smith. And so from what I'm hearing, E.O. Smith's budget is likely to go up next year, so the overall Mansfield education expenditure is likely to be an increase over current year when you add what we're spending for Mansfield Public Schools with E.O. Smith High School. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I've never heard that Region 19 was included, but I mean, because you have Willington and Ashford in that mix too.
Yeah, but every town is assessed an amount of money based on the student enrollment. So
Correct.
we are assessed a certain amount of money for the operation of E.O. Smith, depending upon the number of students that are enrolled there. Those are educational expenditures assessed to the town of Mansfield.
Just the Mansfield students.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other comments or questions? So what's before us, I believe, is to approve this budget adjustment.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion.
Please.
I move that effective March 10th, 2022, that we approve the budgeted adjustments to the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget as proposed and adopt the adjusted fiscal year 2022-2023 budget.
I would like to second that.
Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Opposed? Catherine, could I just get a clarification on your vote?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. All right, motion passes.
Okay.
Unanimously.
Good news for
Thanks to
everybody.
everybody. Yeah.
So, again, if you're the sort of person who saves your budget information, save this packet because this gives you the total picture of your upcoming budget. Now, I said in the middle of all that, oh, I forgot something. My sincere apologies to Mike. Kathy had asked if Mike might be interested in saying a few things to the board, and of course I checked with him, and he was, and I skipped right over it. So my apologies, Mike. Please come on up. I know the board would like to hear from you.
I just wanted to say thank you. It's just such an honor to be named Mansfield's Director of Teaching and Learning. Everyone who works closely with me knows how much I love teaching and learning, and I think you do too, after seeing me present so many times and visiting the school. You know, I love creating innovative learning experiences for kids and nurturing student growth. And there are so many outstanding teachers in the Mansfield community, including members of the leadership team and both superintendents are great teachers. That's a big part of why our team is so strong. To be named Director of Teaching and Learning for such an amazing group is humbling and an honor I will work hard to deserve. I've been fortunate in my career to work in schools and districts that have stretched my thinking and pushed me to innovate and improve my practices. I was invited into Mansfield Community 6 years ago, and my time here has been the richest in my career. Mansfield understands what students need to succeed in today's world, and teachers, leaders, and the board are all committed to bringing it to life. As a school principal for 15 years, this is my 15th year, I was just sharing with you this kind of amazing amount of time. I have learned a great deal about leadership, I work hard to value past practice, listen well, and approach change with humility. I will continue to do so as Director of Teaching and Learning. As someone who knows the work of Mansfield well, I look forward to the opportunity to continue the work of the district in his new role with Peter Dart and the leadership team. So thank you, Superintendent Lyman and Superintendent Dart. I'm not sure how to talk to these people anymore, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you for remembering, Kelly.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't remember right away, but so I'm going to keep us moving through this agenda. We have a really interesting report to share with you next. I'm going to ask Peter Dart and Shamim Patwa to come up. You all know that earlier this year we commissioned 2 different studies that had overlapping purposes. We believed it was time for us to take a look at our student support services programs, all of the things that we do to support students with identified special needs. And given the work that we'd been doing around equity, we also believed that it was prudent to have somebody come in with fresh eyes and take a wide look at what we were doing in our district that supported the values of equity that we were developing and professing through our professional learning and other experiences that we were having. And so 2 organizations came together to help us do that work. One of them is CREC, which is a regional educational service center in Connecticut, and the other is Insight Education Group, the same group that did the equity training and has been helping us with some other things in our system. And Shamim, obviously, in her role, was responsible for working with CREC, and Peter had stepped up earlier this year to work with Insight on this particular project. So they're here tonight to tell you about the process and the findings.
Great. And before Shamim starts with the Student Support Service, I think we both want to thank the board for their interest. We've updated you all along. But most importantly, the engagement of the community, the staff, the students. A lot of people gave input to this work. And without that honest feedback, it would have been really impossible to take a snapshot of our practices with equity and our ability to support students.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank Superintendent Lyman for her support with this. This is a big undertaking. And as Peter noted, there are a lot of pieces and a lot of information here. And Kelly was very supportive in this process. So the support service review looked through a lens with 4 key domains. And I just want to remind you that they were charged with looking at our special ed programming, our early intervention and strategies, and then our social emotional learning as it related to our plans and overall strategies. So with that, they were looking through each of those areas through organizational structures and processes, resources, student learning, and communication and collaboration.
You've seen this equity framework before. Insight has used this in their report, but it's a useful tool to capture the work of a district in terms of these domains. It is the interaction of these domains with regards to equity, but most importantly, when we think about opportunity and access and outcomes, it's how these things interact with each other. But as they did the study, they looked at our structures, systems, and resources. They looked at the culture, community of our schools in town. They looked at the workforce, professional learning, and of course, the curriculum instruction and learning piece of it.
As the slide indicates, there's a lot of different pieces of information that were collected. 4 key areas, document and processes were reviewed, quantitative data, stakeholder engagement, and then finally reviewing back with us. And I just want to highlight a few things in terms of the documents. They were looking at district documents as well as state documents, curriculum materials, and actually the correct team went into classrooms to do observations and reviewed a substantial number of IEPs. In terms of quantitative data, lots of student demographics, special ed prevalence rates, discipline data, academic performance, and then in stakeholder engagement, we reached out to families, students, staff, administrators. So quite a broad range that was represented there.
I just want to add to that piece of it. For the equity audit piece, we also reached out to community members, and that the focus groups and surveys provided perceptual data, which was really interesting to us because it helped us understand what is widely accepted and understood about our practices and the discrepancies that we found. And so you'll hear us talk about the perceptual data that we collected that presented some challenges, but also help us better think about our next steps and moving the work forward.
The next slide, yeah. There's a lot to celebrate in student support services. The correct team identified multiple areas where we've been doing a really good job. For example, there's a robust continuum of supports for students, and you'll see that connected in different ways here too. We meet or exceed time with non-disabled peers. That's an important number. That means that our students with disabilities are within our classrooms, gen ed classrooms. They're not, tucked away somewhere else. They're part of the fabric of the general school. The district has valuable tools and resources. Staff meet frequently to discuss student needs. The correct team found that there is an integration of SEL or social emotional learning skills into instruction. I'd like to also highlight that special ed expenditures are lower than the state average. And one of the reasons for that is that our outplacement numbers are relatively low. Students with disabilities who took standardized testing were on average higher performing than students with disabilities in the state overall. We also have low suspension and expulsion rates. And I think these last two are really important. Family and caregivers indicated students felt safe and that their child was in a positive environment, and that the majority of family and caregivers of students with IEPs were satisfied with their child's program and with the communication.
So the Insight team found a lot of great things to success, and it starts with you and your 6 core beliefs, and number 1 is lead with equity. So that was an important piece to celebrate as it is a driver in our work. They also acknowledged that the school system has a social emotional learning framework, and that social emotional learning and equity are identified as district priorities, and that came through from all stakeholders, feedback through the survey and focus groups. They recognize that the district has increased resources to support this work in SEL and equity, and acknowledge that professional learning has shifted to really focus on equity. As an aside note, Insight that helped with this or led the equity audit really is using Mansfield to think differently in their partnership with other districts, that they're looking for districts who are willing to have a professional learning component with the audit, that just doing an audit isn't good enough, that they realize that the work is important. And during the audit, because of that professional learning, the needle was moving every day, every month. We were gaining ground on our understanding and practices with equity. So that's an important piece to celebrate. We've started to develop systems to disaggregate discipline data. The middle school has led some of this and is helping us better think as we collect that data, how to look at it and look for patterns, and then hopefully look for action plans to reduce discipline incidences. Staff reported positive work experiences in the district. This really is important to us because they know the work, they know the focus, and it is connected to their positive work experiences. Focus groups expressed an importance also in hiring diverse staff members. They know that is important, and they support us, and they want to be an active thought partner with that. Mansfield Public Schools has started to create a recruitment marketing plan. Kelly spoke earlier about this when she showed you the video, that really we were thinking about how to increase the visibility and reach of the district. When somebody wants to apply, the first place they go to is the website. These videos are going to be an important part because they're going to lift not only what we're focused on, the type of energy and passion we have, but they're going to start naming those core beliefs that are aligned to equity, social emotional learning, and supporting students. That's going to be important. So the fact that we have that plan and we're developing it and implementing is really positive. And then as an accolade, and I don't want to confuse this as we're resting on our laurels, but it is important to celebrate the fact that we have 11% of our staff that identify as non-white. And so we know that we want that number to increase. But when we compare Mansfield to other smaller districts, certainly in Connecticut, 11% is really to be commended. When we look at the state average of administrators, teachers, it's 10%. And so when we look at just the teachers and administrators in Mansfield, we're about 8%. So we're not too far off of the state average. And again, I think it's to be commended that and celebrated that we do have that diversity within our work force. And again, it's not some place where we're going to stop, but we're going to keep aspiring to grow that.
So with any review, we know that there'll be things that we need to work on. And the correct review found several areas that I want to highlight here. One of them, which is key, and some of you have heard this already, is our over-identification of Hispanic and Latinx students as students with disabilities. At this point, students identifying as Hispanic or Latinx are about 15% of our population, but represent 24% of our overall students with disabilities. Another area of concern was the over-identification of students in the area of speech and language impairment relative to state averages. Our prevalence rate is 2.9 versus 1.8 for the state. So we have some work over there as well. The correct review noted that there is limited differentiation across instructional environments for students with unique learning needs, and that through focus groups and surveys, they found that staff reported limited planning and cross-collaboration time between gen ed and special ed teachers. And lastly, our multi-tiered system of supports and social and emotional learning practices and procedures are inconsistent across district.
So in the equity audit, we also had some key findings that, again, create some points of reference and will direct our next steps that we're going to talk about towards the end. In the equity audit, we found that stakeholders were generally unclear on district equity definition and vision, which is a bit ironic since we just drafted this beautiful core belief that really is a statement. And so it tells us something about the work that we need to continue to promote that and share it with multiple stakeholders so that everyone can put their fingerprints on it, understand it, and really say it in their own words, so to speak. That there's inconsistent use of disaggregated academic and SEL data. Though we have the data, it's not consistently used in planning and instruction. Academic achievement gaps of Latinx and Hispanic students exist when we look at students in grades 3 and 8. That there's variability in perception and practice related to enrollment of advanced math classes. There's also variability in implementation of SEL and student progressive discipline. Student progressive discipline really is the approach of taking a student who has an infraction and thinking about logical consequences and moving that student with appropriate consequences over time. Hopefully you extinguish or diminish the need of that, but that we're clear on that. And there just seems to be some variability in that implementation. And then finally, inconsistent district and school practices with MTSS. Again, looking at our students in various tiers, and those tiers help us better understand what we need to do for all kids, for some kids, and for a few kids who still have extraordinary needs.
In terms of next steps for support services, and I just want to note that the blue and bold text represents themes that you'll see in the equity next steps as well. First off, we'll be reviewing our evaluation, intervention, and referral practices. That'll pinpoint how we are identifying students or over-identifying students a little more. With that, we'll also do kind of a backward analysis of who are these kids and where were they in terms of the sequence of receiving services and see what we can unpack there. We need to do more with disaggregating data by race and student identifiers. We're doing that already in terms of any new referral. The special ed teams at each of the schools has a form they fill out that asks several questions alongside of, just making sure we have all that student demographic to then analyze better. We'll be reviewing and adjusting schedules to increase efficiencies in student services, really looking at how time is allocated and better understanding where we can, just like it says, increase the efficiency of allowing people to meet on some very complicated students. Continuing to develop our small group instructional practices that speaks to more of the differentiated learning to addressing student needs in small groups. We'll be increasing our professional learning for certified and non-certified staff to address social, emotional, and academic needs. And then one of the I think this will kind of impact a lot of the different areas too, updating, clarifying, and increasing our capacity to better implement multi-tiered system of supports. And then lastly, you'll be seeing this, this information updated in district and school development plans.
And so again, the blue is really highlighting just how connected these two studies have been and how important it is to lift those up because they really help us prioritize what our next steps are. So the next steps in equity, really we need to create a diversity, equity, inclusion district team as an advisory group to promote that district equity statement and vision and to help guide our work and create a tool that helps us progress monitor over time our equity lens and our equity work. We too need to think about disaggregating academic and discipline data across the schools, as well as updating and clarifying the multi-tiered system of supports. We also need to look at ensuring equitable access and opportunity to enrichment, high-level math courses and other programs. And here's where that perceptual survey data becomes an important piece, that when we examine these programs, we know that they have evolved over time and that they are not intentionally shutting the door, but there's a perception that there isn't equitable access and opportunity. So we want to take a closer look and make sure that we're communicating clearly about that and where there is not access and opportunity to create those pathways. We want to identify opportunities within the recruitment plan. So next steps to continue that visibility and reach, we need to hire more diverse candidates and staff members. And so the way to do that is to have people see themselves in our district, in our town, and those videos will be really important, but we know that's not enough. And so looking for partnerships, looking for simple things like exploring websites like Indeed and using that as a leverage tool, thinking differently about how people search for jobs these days and how they learn about the district. We know that's important work. And then we also need to develop multiple a multi-year professional learning plan that's focused on equity, cultural competency, SEL, that includes race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, and identities. And here's the key, it's multi-year, that we're really looking further down the road than just 1 year. And that last dot point really speaks to the fact that we are almost finishing a year under a new strategic plan, and we look forward to updating that district and school development plan to be relevant and to capture these next steps that come out of the support service report and the equity report. So thank you.
Any questions or comments? Jeanette?
So, regarding the MTSS, when you said that there were some difficulties between the schools, do you think that once we have one elementary school, some of those discrepancies will be able to be righted more easily?
Yes, you.
And I think the word is inconsistencies, not difficulties.
Yes.
Right. So there's variability because of the 3 elementary schools. So some of that will be corrected, but there's also in those 3 elementary schools such a small n number that we don't need systemic thinking when you have such a tiny school.
Right.
In the larger consolidated elementary school, we're going to have scale, which is very exciting, but also will give us an opportunity to better clarify what are our tiered systems that support students in reading and mathematics and behavior. So I think it will right itself, but it will also provide us an opportunity to better define it and put those practices in place.
And then my other quick question, you talked about the imbalance in identification of students who are of Hispanic origin. Is that related to ELL issues or something else?
Well, I would like to say that that's part of the unpacking, right? But I could say with confidence it's not just an EL issue. Off the top of my head, I know that some kids come into district who might identify as Hispanic Latinx but already carry an IEP. So some of this is not clean. It really bears
inherited
a lot of untangling. But we have to look at our intervention practices, right? And see where we're meeting kids and what else we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Susanna?
Did you wanna- Thanks. Oh, I just wanted to thank you both for presenting this together. I think it really makes a ton of sense. I think if we're doing good support services and MTSS, well, that's also an equitable, those are all equitable practices. So I just really appreciate this overview and look forward to, like, again, like you mentioned, continuing updates and all of those pieces. I guess one question I have is, it's wonderful to think about a district level team that's going to continue the equity work. I'm wondering if there's a district level team or a separate team or the same team or in-school teams that are kind of working on the MTSS practices and systems and data.
So I want to make sure that you know that in each school there is some type of team. So, and then having 2 schools will mean more consolidated teams.
And I can assure you that you'll see MTSS in the district and school level plans that will elevate it, but also require us to organize a little more intentionally around the deliverables of just being a little clearer and communicating what they are and their implementation.
Kelly?
This is such valuable and imperative work, and I'm so grateful that we have this going on in our system. So thank you for all you're doing with this. I was wondering if there's been anything looked at with any family involvement, in different PTOs and things like that. Are we doing outreach? Will that be a future part of some of the equity study? And then also, a really valuable second question. I will return.
Well, let me to answer your first interesting question, is that there is a lot of work going on right now with that piece of family engagement. I mean, we haven't talked about student absenteeism, all the other things that are part of these identifiers that we'll be looking at a lot more closely. But there is a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of work going on already.
Cool. Okay, great.
But
I
I'll
can
also remind you of the additional psychologist that we are including in next year's budget, and part of that work is family outreach also.
Yeah, I just think, it's an interesting opportunity, like with what you had just sent out about doing the joint PTO meeting and stuff, that we really want to make sure we're not starting that off with isolating a particular group that maybe we could be including. So, I don't know what you can do with that, but just to put the thought out there for you.
Yeah. Family engagement and caregiver engagement is absolutely paramount. And these studies actually engaged our families and collected them. And to that point, the DEI, that diversity, equity, inclusion team, will be a cross-section of our total community and won't just be comprised of staff members, but we do need PTO and community members as part of it. So thank you.
I did remember my second question. I apologize. I'm still recovering from being ill, and I haven't been up this late in a long time, and it's definitely hitting me. So are you planning to distribute or have some way of presenting this PD and these findings to the staff at some point? Or has it already been done?
So little pieces of this study are being shared as I meet weekly with each of the school special ed teams. So they're aware of what's going on, and, it naturally falls into discussions that we're having, which is nice. And then I can back it up with some data and some information, some concrete steps. Yes, it is being shared.
Just to quickly follow up on that, I also wondered about sharing this with families as well, like getting some of this information out, because it sounds like they gave us a lot of great information, and it'd be wonderful to be able to share with them how that's being used to next steps.
I would just like to thank you very much for this very clear presentation. When I heard some of this the other day, I go, oh, wow, that's a lot to digest. But the way you presented it tonight was very helpful and very understandable. So I appreciate that. And Susanna stole my other question. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. Okay, so we're coming to the end here. I'm going to pull up. Okay, I'm going to pull up one of these slide decks to show you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have two more quick agenda items here just to give you an update on our construction projects. These are very recent photos of the middle school roof. You can see in the top two photos some really nicely completed roof surfaces, and on the bottom left, the reason I included that photo is because that shows you that there's still a little bit of trim work to be done on some areas, and they're doing that day by day, depending upon weather and their own crew availability. But the roof is holding up very well, and we are very pleased to, given some of the weather we've had recently, to know that we've got a good strong roof on there. We're still waiting for the installation schedule for the photovoltaics, but we do expect that. Last they told us actually to happen this spring. I thought it might not happen until the summer, but it sounds like they're going to try to get it to happen this spring. So we should have more information soon. And then when it comes to the elementary school, there's so much to share with you. Doesn't it look amazing? So these are drone photos from today. You can see on the right-hand side that almost every element now has a roof on it. You kind of see that center section there. That's ultimately going to be the cafeteria and the main entrance. Yes, well done. But we are, I forget exactly what date they gave us today, but we are close to getting weather tight, as they call it, across the entire building. And then on the left-hand side, I really like this photo because it gives you a nice image of what the building's going to look like when all the windows are in. So you can see the exterior walls. So if you can go to the next set of slides, again, I wanted to give you a sense of where the construction is. So you can see in these close-ups better images of just how much work has been done and how well this building is coming together. The roof is really coming along nicely. They're even getting ready. They're not installing photovoltaics, but they're getting ready with some of the fittings for that. And then if you liked the outside, wait till you see this. Yeah, so the inside of the building is also taking shape. Not in every section, but this is the section that is furthest along. And I think, did I put one more? Yeah, go down one more slide. Look at that. Drywall and everything. So it is definitely coming along. He shared with us today that if in one section of the building they actually think they may be ahead of schedule with pouring the concrete, which pushes the whole project ahead of schedule. So it is feeling much better. Yeah, it is. Yep, they're making really good progress. So the other thing about the new school is we have worked with a design firm on creating some wall displays. One of the wall displays will be an energy dashboard. It will be an electronic display that will give us up to the moment data on energy use throughout the building. And we've worked really hard with both some community volunteers as well as some professionals to really think about how to gather data and display it in ways that are meaningful to children and really do help us make sure that we meet those net zero goals. And then the other type of displays are more instructional displays, but somewhat playful displays and very representative of the Mansfield community. And we will have at some point some display proposals to share with you, but we're making good progress. A really nice thing about this, they showed us a picture of the bathrooms today too. They're almost ready for tiling, some of them. You know, this is going to not just be a really functional school, but it's going to have a lot of beauty to it. And so it's going to be really nice to see it take shape. So that's my report.
Thank you. I was just trying to find, I think we're setting up a date for a site visit, and most of you had indicated that you would like to join. But I feel badly going through my phone here. The last weekend, or no, was it
the last week of March, I think?
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that's possibly we're looking at now, and we're looking for times. I think it's going to be around 3 or 4.
I was going to say, is this what you were trying to make a little later in the day?
For teachers and right now, yeah. So I will keep you posted. I'm sure we'll find out shortly. What we're going to have to do, I believe, is post a special meeting. And
if
so
you all gather, yes.
If we're all there, so. It'd have to be a special meeting. Okay, so I will keep you posted on that.
I know, isn't it fun? Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly, for all of that tonight. I don't believe we have any new business. I don't see any visitors. So that brings us to the consent agenda. We'd like to wish the very best to our staff who are leaving us and thank them very much for our service their service to our district. So with that, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Dave. A second. Thank you, Edith. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think that's unanimous. Great. And any suggestions for future agenda items? All right, then I will take a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of secretary contract negotiations and invite Superintendent Lyman. Motion. Thank you, Susanna. Second. Thank you. All in favor? All right.
Jeanette.
Jeanette and Susanna. Sorry, Martha, I'd go too quickly. I will accept a motion to approve the proposed agreement between the Mansfield Board of Education and the Mansfield Public Schools Secretaries Association, effective July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025. Thank you, Edith. David, second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Great, I think that's unanimous. All right, thank you very, very much, everyone. And then I will take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Dave. Second? Jeanette? All in favor?